The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, the kind of cold, relentless drizzle that seeps into your bones, turns the air heavy, and makes even the brightest streetlights look tired. Inside a small roadside diner, Mara wiped down the counter for the third time that hour. She wasn't doing it because it needed cleaning. She was doing it because it kept her hands busy, and her mind away from the numbers she couldn't ignore. Rent overdue, electricity bill waiting, a mother in the hospital, and a half-empty fridge back home. The diner was nearly empty. Just two truck drivers nursing their coffees in silence. The neon sign outside flickered. Open 24 hours, though Mara secretly wished it would go dark, just so she could rest. Then, through the misted glass door, she saw him. A boy, maybe 9, maybe 10, shoes soaked, hair dripping, clothes too thin for the cold. He pushed the door open hesitantly, the bell above it jingling weakly. For a moment, no one moved. Mara's eyes met his, wide, nervous, and hungry. "Miss," he whispered, voice trembling. Do you have any bread?" Something in her chest twisted. There were rules, no handouts, no freebies. The owner had made that clear. But there were also rules of the heart, the kind no manager could break. Without a word, Mara turned, grabbed the plate she'd been saving for her own dinner, a small bowl of soup, a piece of bread, and a half sandwich, and slid it toward him. The boy stared. Then tears welled up in his eyes. "Thank you, ma'am," he whispered. He ate like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in days. When he was done, he stood, bowed slightly, something oddly respectful, and said softly, "I'll never forget this. My mother says kindness always comes back." Then he disappeared into the rain. Mara stood frozen for a moment, the echo of his words lingering. She sighed, shaking her head. Just another hungry soul, she thought. She had no idea that the next morning, her entire life would change, because when she stepped outside her small apartment at dawn, 20 black cars were lined up in the street, all waiting for her. Morning came softly. A pale, gray light filtered through the thin curtains of Mara's apartment. She woke up before her alarm, as always, not because she wanted to, but because her body had learned the rhythm of survival. The kettle on the old gas stove whistled weakly. 1 spoon of instant coffee. No sugar. She couldn't afford sweetness right now. Mara sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the cracked linoleum floor. Her phone buzzed, a message from the landlord. "Rent is due today. No more delays." She sighed, folded the phone face down, pretended it hadn't happened. Outside, the world was waking up. Vendors shouting, buses groaning down the street, the sound of life continuing, even when hers felt like it was standing still. Her neighbor, old Mrs. Rayna, waved from across the hallway. "Morning, dear. You heading to the diner?" Mara nodded, forcing a smile. "Like every day. Keep your chin up," the old woman said. "Good things come to kind hearts." Mara smiled politely, but inside, she didn't believe that anymore. Good hearts didn't pay bills. Kindness didn't fix broken fridges or heal sick mothers. The walk to the diner took 15 minutes. The sky still hung low with clouds, threatening more rain. She passed the bakery where she used to buy pastries when things were better, and the flower stall where she used to dream of wedding bouquets. Now she just walked faster, eyes down, hands cold. By the time she reached the diner, the smell of frying eggs and coffee already filled the air. Her co-worker, Lena, was stacking plates behind the counter. "Morning," Lena said. "You look tired." "When do I not?" Mara replied, tying her apron. "You hear about the boss? He's in one of his moods today," Lena warned. "Great," Mara muttered. The hours blurred together. Orders, dishes, endless small talk. She'd almost forgotten about the boy from the night before. Almost. Every time the bell above the door jingled, she looked up, half expecting to see that small, soaked figure again. But it was always someone else. A businessman. A couple. A tired traveler. When the lunch rush ended, she leaned against the counter, exhausted. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since last night. Lena noticed. Go grab something. I'll cover you. Mara hesitated. It's fine. But the truth was, she didn't even have money for her own meal today. The sandwich she'd given the boy was supposed to be her dinner and breakfast. As the day dragged on, she started to question her choice. Why did she do it? She couldn't even help herself. When her shift ended, she walked home in the dark, clutching her thin coat against the wind. Streetlights flickered. Her shoes squelched in puddles. Halfway home, she saw a figure across the street. A man in a black coat, standing perfectly still, watching her. Her heart jumped. She blinked. When she looked again, he was gone. Maybe it was just her imagination. Maybe it was exhaustion. She reached her apartment, locked the door, and exhaled. The rain started again. She lay in bed, listening to the drops tapping against the window. Her thoughts wandered to that boy's face, the gratitude in his eyes, the quiet strength in his small voice. I'll never forget this, he'd said. Mara smiled faintly in the dark. She didn't know it yet, but that promise, whispered by a hungry boy in the rain, had already set something unstoppable in motion. Because while she slept, somewhere across the city, a convoy of black cars was being prepared, and every single one of them was heading to her. It was barely dawn when the sound came, a low, rhythmic rumble that didn't belong in her quiet street. At first, Mara thought she was dreaming, but then she heard it again, engines. Many of them. She pulled her blanket tighter and glanced toward the window. Through the thin curtains, she saw something impossible. Headlights, dozens of them. The entire street glowed in soft, white beams cutting through the morning mist. Her heart thudded. She got up, feet cold on the tiled floor, and peeked through the window. Her street, the same street where the trash was never collected on time and the streetlights flickered every night, was now filled with sleek, black cars. 20 of them, maybe more, all parked perfectly in a line, engines still running. Mara's mouth went dry. She whispered to herself, "What on earth?" Then came the knock. Firm, confident, not the kind of knock that asks for permission, the kind that announces something big. She froze. Another knock, louder this time. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, unlocked the door, and opened it just an inch. A man stood there, tall, clean-cut, dressed in a black suit. Behind him, several others waited near the cars, each one dressed the same, each one silent. "Miss Mara?" the man asked. His voice was calm but carried authority. Mara's mind raced. Was this about rent? The diner? Some debt she didn't know about? Why, yes, she managed. The man nodded politely. "My name is Daniel. I work for a client who asked to see you." "A client?" she repeated. "I think you have the wrong person." "I assure you, ma'am, we don't." Her pulse quickened. "Who is your client?" Daniel's expression softened just a little. "You'll see soon enough. He insists on meeting you in person. It's important." Mara shook her head. "Look, I don't know what this is, but I'm not going anywhere with strangers in black cars." "I understand," he said gently, "but please give us 5 minutes. You want to hear what he has to say." The sincerity in his tone disarmed her. Mara hesitated, glancing past him, the convoy of identical cars, the quiet tension in the air, the curiosity of neighbors peeking through curtains. Something inside her whispered go. 5 minutes, she said finally. "That's all." Daniel nodded. "Thank you." He opened the door of the nearest car for her. The leather seat was warm, the scent of new upholstery strange and intimidating. As the car pulled away, Mara's neighborhood disappeared behind tinted glass. She clutched her bag nervously, staring at Daniel's reflection in the window. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To someone who wants to thank you," he replied. "Thank me? For what?" He turned to her. a small smile on his lips. For what you did last night. Her breath caught. Last night? The boy. The diner. The meal she'd given away. What do you mean? She whispered. Daniel only said, "You'll understand soon." The city passed by in silence. They drove through streets she'd never seen. Wide boulevards, tall buildings, and gates guarded by men with earpieces. Finally, they stopped in front of a massive estate. Iron gates opened automatically. Inside, the morning sun broke through the clouds, glinting off marble columns and glass windows. Mara felt her stomach tighten. This was not the kind of place ordinary people got invited to. As the car stopped, Daniel opened her door and gestured toward the entrance. "Please," he said softly. "He's waiting inside." Mara stepped out, heart pounding. She had no idea who he was, but she was about to find out that her small act of kindness had reached someone far beyond anything she could imagine. The doors of the grand estate opened before Mara could even reach for the handle. Warm light spilled out, revealing a hallway so beautiful it almost didn't look real. Polished marble floors, soft gold accents, and a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a palace. She hesitated at the threshold, her worn shoes squeaking slightly on the marble. A woman in a dark suit approached. "Miss Mara, please come this way." Mara followed, still in disbelief. Every sound echoed, her footsteps, the quiet hum of distant music, the faint murmur of staff moving quickly but silently. They passed portraits of people she didn't recognize, faces that looked powerful, proud, untouchable. At the end of the hall, the woman stopped in front of two tall double doors. She turned, her expression respectful yet unreadable. "He's inside," she said. "He's been waiting for you." Mara swallowed hard. Her palms were sweaty, her heart racing. The doors opened slowly. The room beyond was vast, sunlight pouring in through tall windows, curtains swaying gently in the breeze. And in the middle of that room sat a boy. At first, she didn't recognize him. He wasn't wearing the torn jacket or muddy shoes from last night. Now he was dressed in a clean white shirt, his hair neatly combed, his face calm. But when he looked up, she saw them. The same eyes. Wide, gentle, thankful. "Mara," he said, a big grin spreading across his face. She froze. It's you." The boy nodded. "I told you I'd never forget." Mara blinked, completely lost. What is this place? Who are these people? Before the boy could answer, a man entered the room. Tall, composed, carrying himself with quiet authority. His suit looked expensive, but his eyes were warm. "Good morning, Miss Mara," he said. "I'm Elias." She nodded cautiously. "Are you his father?" The man smiled faintly. "Yes, and no." He gestured toward the boy. "This is my son, Leo, but not by blood, by choice. You see, Leo was adopted 3 years ago after we found him living on the streets. We've been searching for him for the past 2 days." Mara frowned. "Searching? He came into the diner last night. He said he was hungry." Elias's expression softened. "We know. He ran away from the estate yesterday morning. He missed his mother. She passed away before we found him. Sometimes he still tries to find the places that remind him of her. Small diners, rainy streets. That was where she used to work." Mara's throat tightened. The boy spoke softly. "You reminded me of her. The way you looked at me. The way you gave me food even when you didn't have much." Her eyes stung. She didn't know what to say. Elias continued, his tone deepening. "You showed him kindness when the world was unkind. For that, we owe you more than you realize." Mara shook her head. "Please, I didn't do it for anything. He was hungry. I just did what anyone should do." The man smiled gently. "That's precisely why it matters." He turned toward the window, hands clasped behind his back. In this world, kindness has become rare currency. People often give expecting something in return, but you gave out of empathy, and that's something we don't forget. Leo ran up to her, wrapping his small arms around her waist. "Thank you," he whispered. Mara's hands trembled as she hugged him back. For the first time in months, she felt warmth, not from the room, but from a moment that felt impossibly pure. Then Elias spoke again, his voice carrying quiet weight. "Mara, I'd like to offer you something." She looked up, startled, but before he could finish, one of the staff members entered the room, hurried, whispering something into his ear. Elias's expression changed. His calm exterior flickered. "Excuse me for a moment," he said. "Please stay with Leo." He left quickly, the door closing behind him. Mara knelt to Leo's height. "Is everything okay?" Leo hesitated. "I think something's wrong. My father gets that look when he's worried." Mara frowned. The peaceful calm of the estate suddenly felt fragile, like glass about to crack. Moments later, she heard raised voices from the hall, muffled, urgent. She stood, heart racing. Whatever was happening out there, she was now part of it. And soon, she discovered that her act of kindness didn't just change her life. It had drawn her into something far bigger than she ever imagined. Mara waited in the study, the silence suddenly heavy. Through the tall windows, she could see the garden outside, rain dripping from marble statues, leaves trembling in the wind. Somewhere in the hall, voices still murmured, low, urgent, and impossible to ignore. Leo tugged gently on her sleeve. "Don't worry," he whispered. "Father always fixes things." Mara forced a smile. "I'm sure he does." A minute later, the door opened. Elias returned, his composure restored, though something unreadable flickered behind his calm eyes. "Forgive the interruption," he said. "We had small issue at the gate." He motioned for them to sit. Mara lowered herself onto the edge of a velvet chair, feeling out of place amid the luxury. Elias leaned forward, folding his hands. "Miss Mara," he began quietly, "do you know why my son ended up at your diner last night?" Mara shook her head. "He was testing the world," Elias said. "He wanted to see if kindness still existed beyond these walls. You see, we live surrounded by people who smile because they're paid to. I fear he's grown up doubting genuine hearts." Mara frowned. "He's just a boy. No one his age should have to test the world." Elias nodded. "And yet he did. And when he came home, he told me about a woman who gave away her own meal to a stranger. No hesitation, no expectation. That's rare." He opened a leather folder on the table and slid a document toward her. "This," he said, "is an employment offer. Full benefits, housing on the estate, and a salary that will cover your mother's medical bills in full. I'd like you to become Leo's personal caretaker and mentor. He trusts you." Mara blinked. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Leo whispered, smiling, but she hesitated. "Why me? There must be hundreds of people more qualified." Elias's gaze softened. "Because he doesn't need someone qualified. He needs someone good." Her throat tightened. The weight of the paper in front of her felt unreal. Months of worry, unpaid bills, and sleepless nights, all suddenly dissolving into one impossible offer. Yet something inside her resisted. "Mr. Elias," she said slowly, "this is incredibly generous, but I can't accept charity." He shook his head. "This isn't charity. It's recognition." Before she could respond, the study door burst open. A man in a headset stepped in, speaking urgently. "Sir, you need to see this. The media is outside. They're saying your son was found in the slums last night. Photos are spreading." Elias's jaw tightened. "Already?" He turned to Mara, apologetic. "It appears your act of kindness has drawn attention. People are asking who fed the missing heir. They'll find you soon, if they haven't already." Mara felt her stomach drop. "Heir?" Elias exhaled. "Yes. My family oversees a foundation that funds most of the city's orphanages and hospitals. When Leo disappeared, it made headlines. Every camera in town is looking for the woman who helped him. Her world tilted. The boy she'd fed wasn't just lost. He was known. And now so was she. Elias's tone softened again. You have two choices, Mara. Return home, where reporters will camp outside your door for weeks. Or stay here, where you'll be safe, with purpose and stability. Leo looked up at her hopefully. Please stay. Mara stared at the contract, then at the boy's trusting eyes. For years, she'd fought just to survive. Now, in one surreal moment, she was being asked to begin again. I don't know if I belong here, she whispered. Elias smiled gently. Maybe, but perhaps belonging isn't found, it's given. A beat of silence. The rain outside eased. Sunlight cutting through the gray. Mara finally nodded. All right, I'll stay. Leo cheered, throwing his arms around her. Elias stood, relief visible in his eyes. Welcome home, Miss Mara. But as the words settled, she noticed something. A shadow crossing Elias's expression. As he looked toward the window, where camera flashes glimmered faintly beyond the gates, something told her that the world's attention, and the power that came with it, would bring challenges she wasn't ready for. And in the coming days, Mara would learn that kindness, while beautiful, could also make her a target. At first, everything felt like a dream. Mara's new room overlooked the gardens, the kind of view that looked painted, unreal in its calmness. The air smelled of jasmine and rain. For the first time in years, she didn't wake up to overdue notices or pounding anxiety. But dreams, as she soon learned, come with shadows. By the third day, she began to notice them. The whispers, staff members lowering their voices when she walked by, the occasional lingering stare. The waitress, that was what some of them called her. Not Miss Mara, just the waitress. When she brought Leo to breakfast, the head housekeeper smiled politely. Good morning, ma'am, she said. But the words carried a thin film of politeness, like glass that might crack if you pressed too hard. Mara pretended not to notice. She threw herself into caring for Leo, helping him with schoolwork, walking with him through the rose garden, listening to his stories. He had a good heart, curious and gentle. One afternoon he asked, Do you miss your old home? Mara hesitated. Sometimes, but I think home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's people. Leo smiled. Then maybe you're home now. Those words filled her with quiet warmth. Until that evening, when everything changed. She just finished tucking Leo in, when a knock came at her door. It was Daniel, the same man who'd driven her to the estate. His tone was serious. Miss Mara, Mr. Elias would like to see you. It's urgent. Her stomach sank. In the study, Elias stood by the fireplace, a tablet in his hand. On the screen were dozens of headlines. Mystery waitress who fed missing heir found. From rags to riches, the woman who saved the boy. Hero or opportunist, the internet divides. Mara stared in disbelief. What is this? The media, Elias said quietly. Someone leaked your name. Paparazzi are already outside your old apartment. They're digging into your life, your debts, your mother's hospital bills, even your work history. She felt dizzy. Why? I didn't ask for this. That's the thing about kindness, Elias said. Once it's seen, people turn it into a story. And stories, he looked up, they're not always told the way you want them to be. He turned the screen toward her. On it was a photo. Mara walking with Leo in the garden, taken from afar. Her privacy was gone. Do you want me to issue a statement? Elias asked. We can spin this. Make it about the foundation. About compassion. Mara's throat was tight. You mean make it look like a campaign? He didn't answer right away. The world loves symbols, Mara. You could help inspire people. She shook her head. That's not why I helped him. I don't want to be someone's headline. Elias studied her face. Sometimes the world doesn't give us that choice. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching reporters' camera flashes beyond the estate gates, like lightning trapped in the dark. The phone buzzed. Messages from strangers filled her inbox, some calling her an angel, others accusing her of manipulation. She only did it for attention. She's after the family's money. No one gives for free. Her hand shook. She wanted to disappear. By morning, she felt hollow. Even Leo noticed. "You're sad," he said. "I'm just tired," she whispered. He frowned. "Did I do something wrong?" She smiled weakly. "Never. You're the best thing that's happened to me." But the truth pressed on her chest. The attention, the rumors, the quiet resentment of the staff, the feeling that she didn't belong anywhere anymore. That night, Elias found her sitting by the fountain. "Fame doesn't suit everyone," he said gently. "I never wanted it," she replied. "I know, but sometimes good deeds echo louder than we expect." Mara looked up. "Then what should I do?" He was silent for a long moment. "Then, maybe the only way to keep your kindness pure is to give again." She didn't understand what he meant. Not yet, but in the days to come, his words would take shape, because soon she'd face a choice that would test her heart all over again, and this time, the cost of compassion would be far greater than a bowl of soup. 3 days after the headlines broke, the estate gates became a wall of noise. Reporters shouting her name, camera drones buzzing like flies over the courtyard. The world had turned her simple act of kindness into a spectacle. Inside, Mara tried to keep Leo distracted, painting, baking, playing piano. But even at 7 years old, he understood too much. "Are they mad at you?" he asked one morning, peering through the window blinds. Mara forced a smile. "No, sweetheart. They're just curious." But curiosity had teeth. By afternoon, the story had spiraled again. A video surfaced, security footage from a cafe that day. It showed Mara handing Leo her meal, but the clip had been edited, slowed, and captioned with insinuations. Staged. Waitress knew who he was. The comments flooded in. Hate, doubt, mockery. The internet had turned on her. When she scrolled through the comments, her breath caught on one line. "People don't give unless they want something back." That sentence hit like a knife. Later that night, as she packed a small bag, Daniel appeared at her door. "You're leaving?" he asked. "I can't stay," Mara said quietly. "This place isn't mine. It never was." He frowned. "Elias won't like that." "I didn't come here for him to like it," she said. "I just came here to rest." Before dawn, she slipped out the side gate. No cameras, no goodbye, just the sound of her footsteps fading into the morning mist. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to start over. She rented a tiny room above a bakery 2 towns away, and went back to waitressing. It felt safe, anonymous, but the silence was heavy. Every night, she thought of Leo, the way he'd looked up to her, the way he'd called her home. One evening, the bakery owner burst in, holding a tablet. "Mara, it's the boy, the one you helped." On the screen was a live broadcast, a massive charity gala. Leo stood beside Elias, smiling nervously at the cameras. Elias was announcing something. The Kindness Foundation, a global fund dedicated to helping children in poverty. But then Elias stepped aside and said, "This foundation wouldn't exist if not for one woman. She taught my son what compassion looks like." He paused. "Mara, if you're watching, we'd like you to join us on stage, if you choose to." The audience gasped. Reporters scrambled. Mara froze. Part of her wanted to hide forever, to escape the judgment, the noise, the spotlight. But another part, the part that had once looked into a hungry child's eyes, knew the truth. Kindness isn't about comfort. It's about courage. She packed her bag again, took a bus into the city. The entire ride, Her heart pounded like thunder. When she arrived, the gala was already in full swing. Security stopped her at the entrance, but Elias himself came down to greet her. "You came," he said softly. "I almost didn't." "I know." He guided her onto the stage. The lights were blinding. The crowd hushed. Leo spotted her first and ran across the stage, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I knew you'd come back," he said, eyes shining. Mara looked at the boy, no longer the shivering stranger in the cafe, but a symbol of everything her act had started. Elias handed her a microphone. "Tell them why you helped him," he said. Mara's hands trembled. She took a breath. "I didn't help him because I expected anything," she said. "I helped because I've been hungry before. Because sometimes the smallest act can save a life. Not just theirs, but yours too." The room was silent. She looked at the cameras. If kindness becomes a performance, it loses its soul. But if we keep giving, quietly, sincerely, we change the world, one small moment at a time. Then she handed the microphone back. The applause that followed wasn't wild or loud. It was reverent, honest, and for the first time in months, Mara smiled without fear, because in that moment, she realized the world might twist stories, but it couldn't rewrite truth. The morning after the gala, the internet was a different place. The same platforms that had mocked Mara the week before were now flooded with messages of apology and awe. Clips of her short, trembling speech spread across the world. Her words, "If kindness becomes a performance, it loses its soul," were quoted on news channels, in classrooms, in church sermons, and even on billboards. Hashtags trended for days. Hashtag the kindness movement. Hashtag feed one. Hashtag be like Mara. But Mara didn't see most of it. She'd asked Elias for one thing, to be left out of the spotlight. So, while the foundation raised millions for children in need, she quietly moved to a small coastal town, one with narrow streets, whitewashed houses, and waves that whispered peace instead of headlines. Every few weeks, she received a letter from Leo. The first one said, "I joined a group at school that helps feed kids after class. I tell them you started it." The second read, "Dad says the foundation is growing fast, but he misses you at the house. We both do." And the third, written in wobbly handwriting, simply said, "You taught me that good people don't need to be seen. They just need to keep giving." She read that one again and again, because in it, she saw the boy who'd once been cold and hungry, now becoming the kind of person who could feed others. That was her real reward. Months passed. Tourists would sometimes recognize her in the cafe where she now worked, not as the waitress who fed the boy, but as the woman who reminded the world what kindness looks like. One evening, after closing, a middle-aged man lingered by the counter. "You're Mara, aren't you?" he asked softly. She hesitated. "I used to be," she joked. He smiled. "My son saw your video. He used to steal food from school lunches. After hearing your story, he started volunteering at a shelter. He said, if she could feed a stranger, I can too." Mara blinked away tears. "Thank you," she whispered. When he left, she stood alone in the quiet cafe, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound. She realized that maybe she hadn't escaped the story after all. She had simply become part of something bigger. Meanwhile, in cities she'd never been to, Mumbai, Lagos, Sao Paulo, Manila, small cafes began leaving kindness meals on their counters, a single dish labeled "for anyone who needs it." A simple act, but a direct echo of hers. People would take photos, tag them online, inspired by Mara, and across the world, millions quietly began to understand. Kindness doesn't need a camera. It just needs a moment, and someone brave enough to give. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Mara walked along the shoreline. She thought about how strange life was, how a single bowl of soup had rewritten her destiny, not through wealth, not through fame, but through meaning. The sea breeze carried children's laughter from the distance, a group from a nearby shelter, playing on the beach. She smiled. "Maybe that's enough," she whispered. "Maybe that's everything." And for the first time in a long time, her heart felt completely still. Not empty, not heavy, but full. Years passed. The world kept moving, faster, louder, more distracted than ever. But every so often, a story would cut through the noise. A clip of a teacher feeding a homeless student, a child sharing lunch with a stranger, a cafe owner giving away free meals. And somewhere in the corner of those stories, people would whisper a name. Mara. She never returned to the headlines. She never opened a social media account or gave another interview. But her act, that single moment in a rain-soaked cafe, had become a quiet revolution. One autumn morning, Mara received a letter with no return address. Inside was a photo. Leo, now grown, standing in front of a new orphanage bearing a small brass plaque that read, "In honor of the woman who taught me to give." Her eyes filled as she read the note attached. "Dear Mara, you once said kindness doesn't need to be seen, but I want the children here to see it every day. You changed my life. Now I'll spend mine changing others. Love, Leo." She pressed the letter to her chest and smiled through the tears, because this was the ending she never knew she needed. That night, she walked down to the beach again. The tide was low, the air cool. She watched the horizon where the sky met the sea, a line blurred by light, and in that soft, golden silence, she whispered, "Maybe the smallest kindness is the loudest echo." For a long moment, the waves seemed to answer, slow, rhythmic, endless. Voiceover / closing narration, YouTube ending style. This isn't just a story about a waitress and a hungry boy. It's a story about all of us. About what happens when we choose compassion over comfort. About how one meal, one gesture, one human moment can ripple across the world. Because the truth is, kindness never disappears. It travels from one heart to another, until the world becomes just a little softer, a little warmer, a little more human. And maybe that's what we're all here for. Not to be remembered for what we had, but for what we gave. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes in kindness. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what it means to be human. Because sometimes, the smallest story can change the biggest hearts.